Well, as part of her tour around the UP, the Michigan Attorney General stopped in Houghton today for a meet and greet. Now there, she spoke about a new upcoming program that will be better to protect and serve victims of violence. TV6's Houghton Hancock Bureau reporter Colin Jackson tells us more about this program.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel visited the Barbara Kettle Gunlock Shelter Home in Houghton today. There, she, shelter staff, and community members discussed the Address Confidentiality Program Act, which will go into effect within the next month. The act, signed by Governor Whitmer in 2020, will hide the home addresses for survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence.
We think that this program is going to go a long ways towards protecting those individuals and making victims and survivors of domestic violence and other assaultive crimes feel safer.
It would provide survivors with a substitute address when needed by public agencies and a free mail forwarding service. Nessel says this would prevent perpetrators from discovering a survivor's residence through public records. However, she says there are still some challenges in implementing the act, including working out the technology for it and ensuring necessary people are trained.
And then also getting people trained on the program. So we have to have people who are certified that can assist victims and survivors of domestic violence and other kinds of violence so that they know how to participate in this program.
The shelter home's executive director says that when the act does take effect, she expects it will help the shelter serve its residents even better.
Those of us that work with victims of domestic violence want to do everything we can to protect the whereabouts of a victim.
Organizations or groups interested in becoming certified should reach out to the Attorney General's office. Colin Jackson, TV6 News, Houghton.
Thank you, Colin.